Welcome to Africa Insight. In this week's video, we talk some interesting developments in Zimbabwe. So Louw, I see there's been a return of a key opposition figure to politics. What does this mean for opposition politics in Zimbabwe, and broadly what does this mean for the long-ruling Zanu-PF?
Right, so last week Friday, January 23rd, Nelson Chamisa announced that he was returning to active politics.
Yeah.
He had quit politics in January 2024, but had signaled middle of last year that he was going to make a comeback, suggesting that he was going to launch a new movement rather than a political party. That's understandable. You'll recall Chamisa took over from Morgan Tsvangirai in 2018.
Yeah.
Well, after Tsvangirai passed away, that is, became the leader of the MDC, stood against Emmerson Mnangagwa in both 2018 and in 2023. Lost both of those elections, of course, but not by an enormous margin. You'll recall that Mnangagwa got only slightly above 50% in both of those elections. So some might argue that if the elections were as free and fair as you would have liked them to have been,
Like Uganda?
Like Uganda,
yeah.
Chamisa might actually have won those elections. And so after 2018, as leader of MDC, he then rebranded it as the CCC, the Citizens Coalition for Change.
Yeah.
That's after all this years-long squabble over the name. Who gets to use the name MDC? Who's the legitimate leader of the MDC? Rebrands it the CCC, new colors, bright yellow, but then shortly after the election, same sort of shenanigans that we had seen previously with the MDC.
Yeah.
Some fairly unknown figure claims to be acting Secretary General, starts recalling MPs and hollows out the opposition, gives Zanu-PF the 2/3 majority in Parliament that they were hoping to get in the election but failed.
Yeah.
And so in January 2024, he quits the CCC, he quits politics altogether, claiming this infiltration by pro-regime figures. Now he's back. He has called his new movement Agenda 2026.
Okay.
He's chosen this moment carefully because, of course, the main political conversation piece in Zimbabwe at the moment, of course, is Emmerson Mnangagwa's term limits. He, constitutionally speaking, his term limits come to an end in 2028, but Zanu-PF is pushing for his term to be extended to 2030. A rather convoluted argument about having him carry on and carry out Vision 2030. But of course the Constitution doesn't allow for it. Zanu-PF is keen on it. The push to get Mnangagwa to stay past his term limits is of course causing consternation within Zanu-PF itself.
Yeah, exactly.
With Vice President Chiwenga hoping to succeed him, and now seeing those ambitions being frustrated by this faction within Zanu-PF. And so the opposition is looking to perhaps enter in at this moment, at a moment where the opposition is quite weak, but trying to seize this moment and relaunch and use that well-known public profile of his.
So then, on just mentioning on opposition, like Chamisa coming back into politics, and all the issues within Zanu-PF itself, do we have a viable opposition for 2028, the next election cycle, or what are the chances now? Do you think they could capitalize? We've seen this in other countries where when the opposition are fragmented, then the ruling government tends to take advantage of this. Could we see the same thing as what happened in the previous election?
Well, the CCC came into the 2023 election with a great deal of momentum.
Yeah.
But then all of that has largely been undone by everything that's taken place after that. And at this point in time, I'm not sure people see the CCC as a legitimate opposition anymore. They're starting to be seen a bit more as the captured opposition, as we've seen in the past with some of these other MDC factions. And so obviously Chamisa quit the CCC, but more recently another relatively well-known opposition figure, former finance minister Tendai Biti, announced a project of his own called the Constitution Defenders Forum.
Project or party? Or movement is there?
Movement, project, party.
Yeah.
The thing is, declaring your new political vehicle a movement helps you avoid some of the pitfalls in the past, where if you register a political party, then you have to deal with the authorities. Then there's always the possibility of your party being deregistered or assets being taken away from you, as was the case with the MDC when the headquarters were taken away and given to the...
Sounds very Tanzania-esque, what Chadema have been going through.
Yeah, so you kind of keep your political vehicle a bit amorphous, and I'm sure he will be registered as a political party closer to the elections in 2028.
Yeah.
But as things stand at the moment, I think it's more trying to build some momentum and trying to put some pressure on Zanu-PF.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And then, Louw, just on another one, let's touch on, just maybe we can close this up, because we've been working on a more in-depth report on Zimbabwe. What's been happening with Zanu-PF? What's going on there? Can you maybe give us an overview of what's been happening on that side? Anything interesting that you're checking?
Well, in broad strokes, the big development within Zanu-PF, of course, has been the Mnangagwa faction versus the Chiwenga faction. And the fact that Chiwenga, who of course was the head of the armed forces, who led the coup against Robert Mugabe, was, as we all know, was promised the presidency after Mnangagwa served his 2 terms.
Yeah.
It now seems that Mnangagwa and his faction are firmly fixed against Chiwenga taking over. There are new names in the hat, and the Chiwenga faction is pushing back and trying to shut down this talk about this term extension.
Yeah.
Because if he can extend his term by 2 years, what stops you from extending it by 4?
4, yeah, exactly.
And so last year we saw a lot of developments. We saw a largely unknown war veteran suddenly come out, posting on YouTube, calling for protests.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yes.
And Mr. Blessed Geza.
I remember I covered that for you while you were. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
In Zimbabwe, they have wonderful nicknames. So Bombshell
Yeah.
is his nickname. He didn't manage to mobilize a lot of people, but he did spook the regime. And so we saw last year that both the heads of the defense force and of the army was changed. So 2 very well-established generals, or well-known, long-serving generals, who retired. Most notably at the head of the defense force itself, General Sibanda, was retired. We now expect to see him come into the Zanu-PF Politburo, which Mnangagwa wanted to do when he was still head of the defense force, but there was pushback, that the top general can't also serve.
Be in politics, yeah. That's
but now that he's retired, and then of course the head of the army was retired in March last year, and was promptly also then drafted into Mr. Mnangagwa's executive. He was named sports minister, replacing the IOC-bound Kirsty Coventry.
Yes.
He was seen as an ally of Chiwenga, so it was almost 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
These 2 generals were retired. The people who were then brought in, first named as head of the army and then later as the defense force, were both luminaries of the Forever Associates of Zimbabwe, the FAS Trust, which is this quasi-security shady group said to have been formed by the Central Intelligence Organization, the feared CIO in Zimbabwe. They've been manipulating and intimidating the opposition, and the FAS Trust has been doing a lot of the dirty work that, sure, the police and the CIO have been doing against the opposition as well, but the FAS Trust really took it to a next level. Some of these individuals were now the head of the army, as sanctioned by the US, for instance. And so by kind of overhauling the leadership of the army, he's taken these senior individuals and co-opted them into the political sphere to swap their uniforms for suits, but also brought these 2 FAS Trust associates into the army, these hardliners, and he's more confident of their loyalty. The army serves to perpetuate the regime in Zimbabwe. And so I think Mnangagwa, concerned about Chiwenga's history as the leader of the armed forces and worrying perhaps about the loyalties of his generals, then went through this process last year to change the military brass in Zim, and make sure this factionism playing out in Zimbabwe doesn't get the military involved.
I think what I'm seeing, Louw, is a big consolidation of power, as we see with many alongside.
Yes.
But,
and whether or not Mr. Chamisa is going to be able to do anything about that, I guess we'll have to see. I think some Zimbabweans might look at Nelson Chamisa and go, "You've already tried twice to defeat the incumbent, you failed twice. Perhaps you're more the past than the future."
Yeah, I think let's leave it at that. Thanks, Louw.
Thank you for joining Africa Insight this week. If you'd like more information on our products or services, please visit our website or socials.